Okay, I see more people hopefully will come on. Good evening, everybody. It's Wednesday night, so we're going to learn again halacha and Tanya. So we started again from the beginning of Shulchan Aruch. Last time we ended off discussing, starting to discuss the laws of getting dressed. Again, Torah encompasses the entire life of a person, from the minute you're born until the minute you die, from the minute you wake up until the minute you go to sleep. So Torah basically tells us even how, because every aspect of it is serving Hashem. If a person gets dressed the way Torah tells us to get dressed, then getting dressed is actually serving Hashem. If you eat the way Torah tells you to eat, so then eating becomes a way of serving Hashem. So last time we started discussing that the whole concept of dress for a Jew, number one, is to be modest, and because Hashem is present all over the place, and therefore, to the best of one's ability, they should be modest in getting dressed, getting undressed, and also because the concept of a Jew is modesty. Jews should not be wearing, so to speak, flashy clothing that are made to get attention. It applies both to men and women. A modest person doesn't like to be calling attention to themselves because, they realize it's Hashem's the one that needs to get the attention, not us. So a person should not wear, for instance, non-Jewish colors, non-Jewish clothing. In fact, it's interesting. If you look in the big Shulchan Aruch, it says, one opinion says you can't wear any clothes that are black. Another opinion says you can't wear clothes that are white. Another opinion says you can't wear red clothing, blue clothing. A bunch of colors are mentioned there. And they explain, in those countries where they were citing that law, the style of the goyim, the goy that you stood out as a non-Jew was wearing that color. So then if a Jew is wearing a garment to be mixing in with the non-Jews, they are transgressing a biblical commandment, what's called you're not allowed to follow in the ways of the non-Jews. A Jew has to be different. We are different. If you look in the world today, we're very different. Everybody hates us. So we're different. So even in the dress, a person is supposed to wear modest clothing, not clothing that, loud, calling attention to themselves and things like that. Now, we started mentioning last week, but we didn't get into the details. Now, because right is more important than left, so therefore, the right side of the body goes before the left side of the body. Unless if you're a left-handed person, then, like we said, your left hand is your right hand. So then, your left hand is your right hand. So when we see right hand, we're talking about right-handed people, or for a left-handed person, that is their left hand, so to speak. Now, again, we mentioned that when a person, let's say, showers, you're supposed to wash your head first, then the right side of the body, left side of the body. The same thing with getting dressed. When a person gets dressed, they should put in the right sleeve first. We discussed it briefly last week. Then the left sleeve, the right pants or whatever it is, and the left. The only difference to that is when you tie shoes, because when you put on shoes, you put on the right shoe first. But tying the shoe, you tie the left shoe first. Why is that? Because when it comes to tying, we find by tefillin, you should tie it for a sign on your hand. And the Gemara learns out that means your left hand. Okay? So therefore, by tying, the left hand is more important. So therefore, anything you're tying, the left side goes before the right side. Now, it also says in halacha, you should be careful not to put on two clothing at the same time, or in other places it says taking off two clothing at the same time. The only thing with some poskim right is shoes, it doesn't matter. In other words, you can put on both shoes at the same time. But you shouldn't put on, let's say, a shirt and an undershirt at the same time, because it's kosher l'shikha. In fact, it says it makes you forget your learning. And then same thing, it says you're not allowed to wear something inside out. It's forbidden to wear something inside out unless if it's made, dual, what do you call it? You can wear it on both sides. So then it doesn't matter. Halacha says because then both sides are the right side. But you shouldn't wear any garments inside out. This also makes you forget what your learning is, what you learned. Another thing is when you take off the clothing, then you do the reverse of the way you put it on. Now you put on the right sleeve first. So when you take off your clothing, you take off the left sleeve first, then the right sleeve. The left leg, then the right leg. And shoes is the same thing. You untie the right first, then untie the left, then you take off the left shoe and then the right shoe. Again, this is the opposite of the way you're getting dressed. We also mentioned briefly that when a person gets dressed in the morning, they're supposed to get dressed top to bottom. Okay, you first put on the upper level, then the lower level. Now you don't have to put on all the upper levels and then the bottom levels, but each level that you're putting on, so to speak, you should put on the top one first, then the bottom one. When you remove, like for instance, for a man, first you put on your shirt, then you put on the pants. When you're getting undressed, you take off the pants first and then the shirt. It's just the opposite way of putting it on, because that actually shows the importance and the prominence of the right over the left versus the left. So that's what a person should do as far as getting dressed. Now, there's another din which was actually censored originally in the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, but then it's put back in. Now, in Shulchan Aruch it says you're not allowed to go 4 cubits, this is for a man, with your head uncovered. Okay? Now, the origin of that is because the Gemara tells a story that there was a great sage of the Gemara, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak was told by his mother before he was born, was told by the stargazers that your son is going to be a thief. He's going to be a thief. So from the time he was born, she made sure that his head was always covering. Why? To have the fear of Hashem over him. And he grew up to be this great sage of the Gemara. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak was one of the greatest sages of the Talmudical times. Now, in halacha, therefore, it says that, again, you're not allowed to do anything to blend in with the goyim, let's say, the non-Jews. It's, again, biblically, so now the question is like this. In Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe says, and the Taz holds like that, a man must cover his head. Why? Because if he doesn't, why is he going without a kippah or yarmulke? Because he wants to blend in with the goyim. He shouldn't stick out as a Jew. So then if that's why he's doing it, so then technically a lot of people, there's leniencies today in the world, but in Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe is pretty strict that you're actually transgressing the commandment of chukasem leisilechu. Now, that primarily, it's interesting. In the Muslim countries, people anyway covered their head. So if a Jew was uncovered, it wasn't so much to blend in with the Muslims, because the Muslims covered their head. But in the Jews, in fact, everybody knows, I mean, today it's called kippah, but in the olden days, it was called yarmulke. Yarmulke, you have a yarmulke. What's the word yarmulke mean? So yarmulke is really 2 words pronounced quickly. Yarmulke is Yorei Malka, fear of the king. That's why he wore the kippah on his head, the yarmulke on his head. He should have the fear of heaven. So when you pronounce the word quickly, it's yarmulke, but it's really Yorei Malka, the fear of heaven, And again, ideally, a person should be wearing a yarmulke. Now, especially, that then applies especially when a person is making a bracha. Then it's mandatory, even those people that maintain it was only like modesty, not actual. But according to them, you're not allowed to say a blessing. You're not allowed to say a bracha without a head covering. To daven, say head. You're not allowed to say a bracha with it. Or he says, just to say a davar shebekadusha with your head uncovered. Now, even if it's, let's say, a knitted thing that there's holes in between, so it's still kosher as a yarmulke, by the way. If somebody would wear like a doily, whatever, I'm talking about for men, that would still be considered a head covering because it's still covering the head. The codifiers, the post can talk about that as far as, you should have the fear of the king and so on and so on. Now, another din is a person should be careful not to walk like, with his head up high as if, I own the world. Again, it's not a form of modesty. You shouldn't bend your head too far down looking at the ground, banging into the person in front of you. In other words, it's simple English. A person should walk in a very modest style because, again, that's what Jews are all about, modesty. There's modesty in thought. There's modesty in speech. There's modesty in action. There's modesty in behavior. It's in clothing. It's in everything. People should just try to be as much modest as possible. Another din over here is that a person should be careful. No. This concept of wearing a yarmulke applies only to men. It's nothing to do with women. Women, okay, if they're married women, they're supposed to be covering their head. But unmarried women don't need to cover their hair at all to wear a yarmulke. It's only for men that they must cover their head. Women, they don't have to cover their head. I'm saying single women. They don't have to cover their head. Another din is, and this again because of spirits, whatever. A man should not walk between two women. A woman should not walk between two men. People should not walk between two dogs or two pigs. Or you shouldn't let a dog walk between two people. Everybody brings it down. It's an union of basically the ruach ra or whatever it is. Now, that doesn't apply though, by the way, to very close relatives. Like a father can walk in between two daughters or between his wife and a daughter, or the wife can walk between two sons. That doesn't apply, Poskim, right, to close relatives. But generally speaking, people should try to avoid, when possible, walking in between two women or having a woman walking between two men or things like that. That's a din brought down in Shulchan Aruch. Okay. As far as the laws of going to the bathroom, we're going to leave that out. But the general concept, again, people should be as modest as possible when they're using the facilities, even though it's a bathroom, but still God is present in all those different places. Next thing over here is cleanliness when you want to daven. When you want to say a bracha, you want to daven, you have to make sure that the place that you're davening in or learning in or saying Tillim should be a clean place, just physically clean even. There shouldn't be any manure or any bodily waste, or shouldn't be nakedness. A person is not able to pray in front of a naked person. Even a baby, if a baby is being diapered, you can't say something holiness while the baby is being diapered, even though it's a baby, but still you can't say anything while the person is not. Now, even I'll tell you an example. In halacha discusses about davening in the street. Okay, and halacha is pretty strict. You can't daven in the street because there's always that, from dogs and horses and the unknown times. So again, it also depends where you live. In most cities today, like in Beverly Hills, it's a felony if you let your dog do its thing and you don't clean it up right away. So when you walk in the streets, in a lot of places in LA, it's like that. When you walk in the street, let's say in Beverly Hills, the street's clean. There's no dog do or anything like that there. So then in those cases, you would be allowed to daven. But in the old times, they had cows warming the streets and the horses and, everything. The person had to actually be very careful, where they're allowed to daven. There has to be a clean place. But, you have to make sure that you're not davening and you have to keep 6 feet away and things like that. Okay. Now, in a bathhouse, which includes a bathroom or mikveh, you're not allowed to speak words of Torah. You're not allowed to speak words of Torah in a bathhouse. In fact, halacha says you're not allowed to even think Torah in a bathroom or in a bathhouse. Because thinking Torah is also something holy, and it's not a modest place. So therefore, you're not allowed to say the names of God in a bathroom. In other words, you can't say, I'll give an example. You're not allowed to tell, and this happens, but they're not really not allowed to do it. You come to the mikveh, okay, and you see a friend, and you say, oh, Shalom Aleichem, how are you? In a mikveh, you're not allowed to say Shalom Aleichem. Because Shalom is one of the names of Hashem. If you look in the book of Rus, it says, when Boaz met the workers, Boaz said to them, Hashem, Yud Kei Vav, Hashem Aleichem. May God be with you. In those times, the people were much, much holier. They didn't say Shalom Aleichem. They said Hashem Aleichem. Okay? Even many of the Sephardic Jews today, which it says in halacha they really shouldn't do it, you ask them how they're saying, how they feel, they say Todah Lakel. But they don't say Kel. They say Hashem's name the real way. So Shulchan Aruch says you're not allowed to say it because you're saying Hashem's name in vain. But I'm saying even in a bathroom, in a bathhouse, in a mikveh, for sure you're not allowed to, or in a swimming pool, by the way. So let's say you have a bunch of friends over in a swim party, and somebody walks in and you say, oh, Shalom Aleichem, how are you? You're not allowed to say Shalom Aleichem. Because, like we said, years ago, they used to say Hashem Aleichem. Now, they don't say Hashem Aleichem. We say Shalom Aleichem. But the Gemara says Shalom is one of the names of God. Okay, it's one of the names of God. The question was asked just now, so why is it possible that when a woman goes to the mikveh, she says the bracha in the mikveh? By the way, it's interesting. Sephardic Jews will not say it in the mikveh room, where the actual mikveh is. They'll go out and make the bracha. Ashkenazi Jews do make it, and halacha says that's an exceptional case because you have to do the bracha right before the doing, but the woman does cover herself in the water to be blocked but that's an exception to the rule because she has to make the bracha in the mikveh because she has to make the bracha right away. So because Shalom Aleichem is a name of God, Shalom, instead of Shalom Aleichem, we say Shalom Aleichem. So you're now to say Shalom Aleichem in the mikveh. You say, hi, how are you? But the question is, what happens if somebody's name is Shalom? A lot of people have the name Shalom. Are you allowed to say, hey, Shalom, hurry up? Or, Shalom, if it's a kid, you're going to say, hey, Shalom, hurry up. Or, hi, how is Shalom doing? So that then is, you're allowed to say a name Shalom in the mikveh. It's discussed in halacha. You're allowed to say the name Shalom in a mikveh because you're not saying it as the name of God. You're saying it as the name of a person. But Shalom Aleichem actually means Hashem should be with you. And therefore that would be forbidden to say in the bathroom. You're not allowed to say words of Torah in the bathroom. Okay, women's parts of women's body you have to be covered, especially when you make a bracha. Same thing with a man and things like that. Okay, I'm not elaborating on these dinim because self-understood why. Okay, the next din over here we'll just start, which is a very important din, and that's the dinim of brachos. General laws of making blessings. Okay, a Jew is supposed to make 100 blessings a day. Okay, the Gemara tells a story in the time of David HaMelech, there was an epidemic, and 100 people were dying a day, and nobody knew why. And David HaMelech asked Hashem, whatever, why? And he was told that if you institute 100 brachas a day, the epidemic will stop. And he instituted 100 brachas a day, and therefore the epidemic stopped. Now, there's psukim that says, Ma Hashem Elokecha shel mimach, what does God want from you? The Gemara says, don't read it ma, read it mea, 100. Mea Hashem Elokecha, Hashem is asking you to say 100 brachas. Or there's another Ashrei Gever Hukam oil. Praiseworthy is the person who establishes oil, a yoke. Oil, ayin lamed equals 100. So anyway, the Gemara says that David HaMelech instituted, a Jew needs to make 100 brachas a day. That just to go off for a second, during the week, it's not a big problem. Because you have all the brachas in the morning, which is 20-something brachas. Then you have a few brachas in the middle of davening, Baruch Shama, Yishtabach, Yetzir Ameres, Abecha Bamiso, Biava, Goal Yisrael. Then you have 19 brachas of the Amidah that you say 3 times a day. So 3 times 19 is 57, plus the 25 plus of the morning, and you eat food, you did it. So you have 100 brachas each day. The bigger problem is Shabbos, because Shabbos, the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah, has only 7 brachas instead of 19. So even though Shabbos you have Musaf, which is an additional tefillah, but it's only 4 times 7, which is only 28, versus 57 that you have during the week when you have the 19 brachas of Shemona Esrei. So therefore it says you're supposed to eat more on Shabbos, make extra brachas, eat a little nash here and there to make 100 brachas. But the concept of brachas is originated in the Chachamim. The Anshi Knesset HaGedolah, the men of the Great Assembly, instituted the 7 rabbinic mitzvahs that we have. One of them is making brachas. They instituted the text of davening that we have. All the rabbinic mitzvahs basically were instituted by the men of the Great Assembly. That was at the time of Ezra, Nehemiah, Mordechai was one of them at the beginning of the building of the second Bais Din. So they instituted the brachas that we say today, and that's the text of the bracha. Now, there's different types of brachas. By the way, all brachas are rabbinic except benching, birchas hamazon if you're full, and according to many opinions, birchas haTorah, the brachas we say over the Torah, and in the morning we say birchas haTorah. According to many opinions, that's also biblical, but the only bracha that's biblical is the bracha that Torah says, v'yachalta, v'savata, u'berachta. You'll eat, you'll be full, and then you'll say the bracha afterwards. So even benching, if you're full, that's biblical. If you're not full, but you're at a kazayas, an ounce, that you have to say an after bracha, that's still rabbinic. Even the brachas that we say on biblical mitzvahs, let's say tefillin is a biblical mitzvah, right? Matzah is a biblical mitzvah. Lulav is a biblical mitzvah. The brachas that you say on them are still rabbinic. They're not biblical brachas. The mitzvah is biblical. The Chachamim instituted to do a bracha before you do those mitzvahs, but it's all rabbinic. And it's not for now. Maybe as we get on, there's a big difference if it's a biblical mitzvah, the bracha, or it's a rabbinic mitzvah. And we'll see that as we get more into brachas. So there's one type of bracha that's called birchas hamitzvah. Birchas hamitzvah means before you do a mitzvah, you make a bracha. There's something called birchas hanenin. Brachas that were instituted when you benefit. You eat something, you make a bracha. You smell something, you make a bracha. There's certain brachas that are called birchas hanenin. You benefit from something, you want to say thank you to Hashem for giving it to us. So we say a bracha birchas hanenin. There's birchas heidah, brachas thanking Hashem, like a bracha of agomel, right? Somebody had a miracle happen to them, or they're in a terrible situation, they got out of it. So they bench gomel, right? But gomel is not mitzvah. Gomel is not a bracha v'hano. You're not benefiting. It's thanking Hashem. It's called birchas heidah. Brachas of thanking Hashem. Now we're going to be talking about brachas that you say and birchas hanenin. Brachas that you say when you benefit from something. So it says like this: before you make a bracha, you're supposed to know what bracha am I making. Let's say you're going to eat a food, okay? You make a bracha. So before you eat the food, you have to know what bracha is it. Is it a mezainis? Is it ha'etz, ha'adama, sha'akol? You're supposed to know. You're not supposed to go, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, you know, what am I supposed to say? Before you make a bracha, you're supposed to know what the bracha is going to be. Because when you say the name of Hashem, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu, which is the primary part of the bracha, you need to know what the ending of the bracha is. And, okay, that's number one. Number two, you're not allowed to do anything when you make a bracha. You're not supposed to. That means when you bench, you shouldn't be doing anything. When you make brachas, you shouldn't be doing anything. Why? Because you're thanking Hashem. You know, you should be concentrating on what you're doing. You know, you're thanking Hashem. We're asking Hashem for something. And it's only decency concentrate completely on what they're doing, not everything else. Am I still being heard? Yeah, because it just said it's unstable. Okay. Another thing, when a person is making a bracha on a food, let's say, halachically, you need to hold that food or the object you're making a bracha on in your right hand. If you're left-handed, in your left hand, which is your right hand. But when you're eating an apple or anything else, no, I'll answer that question soon. If somebody, you're supposed to hold the thing in your right hand and think about what the bracha is. In other words, you're eating an apple, okay? You're thanking Hashem that He gave us the apple. So you want to thank Him properly. Properly means you're concentrating. It says you shouldn't say the bracha quickly. You should say it properly. Think what you're saying. You shouldn't say like habitual. In a way, I don't even remember, did I make a bracha or not? If you don't remember if you made a bracha or not, that shows you probably didn't say it with the proper intent. Otherwise, you would have remembered. Another thing is that when a person makes a bracha, this is a very practical din, by the way. Your mouth has to be empty. You can't have anything in your mouth when you're making a bracha. I'll give you a very practical, it's later already. We'll just finish this din, then we'll go to time. Just a very practical din. I'm having cake and coffee, okay? So I make a mezainis, I take a piece of cake, okay? I'm not allowed to make a shahakol on the coffee until I finish and swallow the cake. I can't make shahaka while my mouth still has cake in it. Why? There's a pasuk that says, Yimole pi tehilosecha. My mouth will be full of your praise. So Chazal learned from that your mouth has to be full of the praise. You can't have other stuff in your mouth because then your mouth is not full of praise. So if you're eating cake and coffee, let's say, or juice, whatever it may be, you have to make a bracha mezainus, eat the cake, swallow it, a piece of it at least, swallow it, when your mouth is clean, then you make a bracha on the coffee, and then you can continue eating. Okay, to be continued. Right now we're going to go to Tanya.